The Chiefs got their first win of the year last week, and now halfway back to 500, we get another edition of one of the league's best matchups as Kansas City takes on the Baltimore Ravens. Now we got to start with this quarterback matchup because while we've seen these guys face off quite a bit over the years, they're making history every time they take the field against one another. It's only the fourth quarterback matchup to ever be played multiple times between players with multiple MVPs entering the game. Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady faced off 3 times, Brady played Peyton Manning 3 times, and Kurt Warner faced Brett Favre 3 times. This is the 7th overall matchup between Mahomes and Jackson, and the second time since Jackson won a second MVP award. Mahomes and Jackson are just 2 of 11 players all-time to win multiple MVPs, the others being Manning, Rodgers, Brady, Warner, Favre, Jim Brown, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, and Steve Young. Mahomes and Jackson also account for 2 of the 4 highest winning percentages by a quarterback since the AFL-NFL merger. Mahomes ranks first ahead of Brady and Roger Staubach, then Jackson is right there at 4th all-time. Then look at all-time career passer rating. Jackson is the best in NFL history, while Mahomes is right there at number 3. Jackson is off to a great start this season too. He's thrown 9 touchdowns to 0 interceptions while posting a top quarterback rating in the NFL and the highest average yards per attempt mark in the league. The latter number, at 9.6 average yards per attempt, is the highest mark through 3 games in Jackson's career. And the only player in the last 50 seasons with a higher passer rating than Jackson through 3 games was Tom Brady in 2007, the year the Patriots went undefeated in the regular season. So why are the Ravens 1-2? Well, we'll get to that here in a second, because Jackson is also the first quarterback in NFL history to record at least 10 offensive touchdowns, commit 0 turnovers, and post a losing record over a 3-game span. The Ravens own the top scoring offense in the NFL at 37 points per game, and they lead the league in plays of 20 or more yards with 16. These are not your standard characteristics of a 1-2 team, but 3 things have held the Ravens back. Some critical turnovers at the worst times, a failure to protect Jackson in passing situations, and a defense that's currently allowing the 2nd most points per game of any team in the NFL. Let's talk about each of those, beginning with the turnovers. And it's interesting, because the Ravens have only committed 2 giveaways, both fumbles, all season. But both were enormous, and inexplicably, Derrick Henry, who lost 8 total fumbles in 8 career seasons prior to this year, was responsible for both plays, each of which happened in the 4th quarter when the Ravens were either leading, as was the case against Buffalo in Week 1, or driving to take the lead. That was the situation against Detroit last week. The Ravens lost both of those games, and it's been part of an up-and-down season for Henry so far, who rushed for 169 yards on just 18 carries in Week 1. That's an average of just under 10 yards per carry, but he's rushed for only 73 yards on 23 carries in the 2 games since. Remarkably, these last 2 weeks marked the first time in the Lamar Jackson era, which dates back to 2018, in which the Ravens went back-to-back games without at least 100 yards rushing. The Chiefs' defense under Steve Spagnuolo has contained Henry more often than not as well, holding him under 100 yards in 3 of their 5 matchups. And the Chiefs were excellent against Henry in Week 1 last year, holding him to only 3.5 yards per carry. But still, this is Derrick Henry. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame one day, and early season struggles aside, the Chiefs have got to find a way to contain him on Sunday if they're to slow this Ravens offense down. Now, I mentioned the Ravens' protection issues, and this one is tough to believe. Only Cam Ward on the Titans has been sacked more times than Lamar Jackson this year. It's nuts. Jackson was sacked 23 times all of last season. He's already halfway to that number in 3 games this year, and last week against Detroit, the Lions got him 7 times. It was an awesome team effort for Detroit, who covered well on the back end, and when Jackson looked to take off, the Lions covered all of his escape lanes. This was an incredible display of discipline against one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in NFL history, and when the Lions had a shot to take him down, they didn't miss. And really, that's been a theme for Jackson all year. He's been near perfect when kept clean in the pocket, but when under pressure, his numbers have dipped significantly, especially when pressured with only 4 rushers. The Lions got pressure with only 4 on half of Jackson's 22 dropbacks in which he wasn't blitzed last week, and on those, they sacked him 5 times. The Chiefs' ability to replicate that success on Sunday would be enormous, and for what it's worth, that's exactly what they did last week against New York. The Chiefs pressured Russell Wilson on 54% of his dropbacks last week, so 20 of 37, and they only blitzed him 6 times. In fact, 18 of those 20 pressures took place on 4-man rushes. That's a big deal. Chris Jones and George Karlaftis each recorded 7 individual pressures last week, and Omar Norman-Lott recorded 5 as part of that effort. They were relentless, and overall, the Chiefs held New York to a 1-for-10 mark on 3rd down. They were 1 for 4 on 4th down, and a week after Giants receivers Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson combined for 17 catches, 309 yards, and 3 touchdowns, the Chiefs shut that duo down to a tune of only 3 catches for 39 yards on Sunday. This remains the #1 scoring defense in the NFL since the beginning of the 2023 season, holding the opposition to just 18.3 points per game during that 37-game span. And of course, the Ravens are synonymous with excellent defense. It's been their identity for 20 years. But let's circle back to what I mentioned earlier about the Ravens' overall struggles, and the defense has been central to it. These guys are allowing 32 points per game. That's 31st in the NFL, ahead of only Miami. They're allowing the most yards per game of any team at 415, the second most passing yards in the NFL, and the third most rushing yards in the league. The 96 points and 149 average rushing yards they've allowed so far are each the most through 3 games in Ravens history. These numbers are shocking considering all the talent Baltimore has on that side of the ball, but it's just been the reality so far, and I think it begins with their run defense, which was outstanding last year. The metrics compiled by Pro Football Focus, for example, ranked the Ravens' run defense as the 4th best in the league last season. This year, they're dead last so far. They missed 20 tackles just last week, allowing the Lions to rack up 220 rushing yards, and 157 of those yards took place after first contact. So for the Chiefs in this game, running the football could play a big role in a win, and after struggling to run the ball through the first 2 weeks of the season, the Chiefs found some success with it last week, recording 105 yards on the ground. And notably, Patrick Mahomes was only responsible for 2 of those yards. That's a big deal, considering that Mahomes racked up over 50% of the Chiefs' rushing yards through week 2. But last week, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, and Brashard Smith combined to average over 4 yards per carry. And it was particularly evident in the second half, especially on the Chiefs' opening drive of the third quarter, which included 3 runs on first down that averaged 7 yards per carry. The Chiefs were incredibly balanced on that series, running it 6 times and throwing it 5, culminating in a 5-yard strike to Tyquan Thornton. And what a game for him, catching 5 passes for 71 yards and that touchdown. He was clutch too. 3 of his 5 receptions either moved the chains or found the end zone on 3rd down. He caught a 21-yard pass on 3rd and 6, and 1 snap after nearly catching a 34-yard touchdown a little later in that same drive, Mahomes went right back to Thornton, and they connected for a 33-yard completion on 3rd and 10. That then set up the game-sealing touchdown run by Kareem Hunt. It was a great sign for the Chiefs offense moving forward because it demonstrated some real trust on the part of Mahomes that he could throw the ball up with a defender in his face and Thornton wouldn't let him down. We'll see if the Chiefs can get Xavier Worthy back this week. That'd be huge if so. But later this season, when Rashee Rice and Xavier are both back on the field, Thornton's emergence as a viable weapon in this offense might actually make us look back on this time as a positive when it comes to the long-term growth of this offense. So it won't be easy on Sunday. Just as the Chiefs are a lot better than their record indicates, the Ravens are too. These are still 2 of the best teams in the AFC, and 2 teams I suspect will be there late in January. That makes this a great opportunity for Kansas City to not only get back to 500, but to make a statement in the process.